Hey everyone, it's Failed Sean back on another video, and today we're going to be going over every single legendary in the game very briefly. I did get a comment on the last one about every epic reviewed to just suggest some game modes that we're going to be using these characters in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, as well as giving you a brief overview of kind of why I think the way that I think about each legendary. So if you do enjoy the content, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's jump right into those legendaries. All right, so we're going to start off with the Holy Light Empire, and Lydia is our first one up. And initially, I was actually much higher on Lydia than I am now. I recently tested her out on stream. I do not believe she actually has very, very solid uses overall. The problem here is that she actually is very, very solid if you're able to get this passive procced consistently, but it requires you to get dodge activated. So she needs to be hit, and then you also need to proc the RNG chance that it will dodge. So using her on offense is very, very tricky because you cannot get full value out of her because she needs to be hit. But if she's getting hit and she's actually taking the damage, she's most likely dying. And so really the problem here is that we're not getting enough damage on a single target unit to warrant her being used. She is actually really great in arena defense, but on offense, I really don't see any place for her. Then the next one up is Urian, and Urian is an excellent character, one of the best AoE damage dealers in the game. Now, a lot of people ask me why Urian is so good, because he only has this one AoE skill. Well, he's actually got a ton of uses, and the reason for that is actually his passive. And the reason why his passive is so good is because elemental advantage is massive in this game. It's a 50% damage increase. And so when you're running Urian, you're going to have that elemental advantage every single time you attack, as long as you're only hitting once per round. And so if you're hitting all the different elements on Void Tower, which is very, very common, he's going to get that 50% damage increase across all of them. On top of that, if you do happen to have a little bit of focus on them, you're going to give a little bit of defense down for the rest of your squad, as well as he's going to be very, very survivable because he's going to be granting himself that shield. That's going to be quite significant. And also, this one is very, very particularly awesome. He can actually steal the unkillable from Dark Nick, so he's an excellent counter against Dark Nick if you do happen to have some focus. Very, very good character overall. Let's go ahead and jump into the next faction here, which is Chris's faction. And we're going to start off with Boobag. So, Boobag here is honestly, unfortunately, really just unused at this point. He has some interesting kits, or at least some interesting parts of his kit here, where he's extremely fast and he's guaranteed to get that that first turn of every single battle. Very, very interesting, as well as one of the few characters that can kind of bypass the cap on speed, or the soft cap, where he can get a bunch of bonus turns based off of his speed, and then he's going to just do a ton of damage based on his speed. Now, that ton of damage is actually not that much. If you build him out with complete attack, crit rate, crit damage, he can do a decent amount of damage, but it's not enough oftentimes to warrant building him out with that. He can be very, very good in arena offense, arena defense, but he isn't really good in any other game mode. You can perhaps use him in some Void Tower stages with the Rebel set, because his ultimate's going to be hitting a ton of times, so you can get a lot of procs off that Rebel set. So overall, not a too great of a character, but okay in arena. Next one up is going to be Hector, and Hector is just a massive single target damage dealer. He's going to be your go-to single target damage dealer for something like Guild Boss, something like Tulpa, if you have him available to you. He's going to have a decent AI, but unfortunately his AI holds him a little bit back because he has a very specific turn order where you're going to want to stack up some axes and then ult to get maximum damage. And unfortunately, the AI doesn't do it quite properly, but it's still a very, very good character and very, very good single target fire DPS in Guild Boss, in Tulpa, and perhaps wherever you need a single target fire DPS in Void Tower, maybe in Bounties. Next one up is Garel, and this one is another single target fire DPS. And honestly, I think he tends to outshine Hector quite a bit. So he is, again, another go-to fire single target DPS. He is on par with Hector, honestly a little bit better, or actually quite a bit better in my opinion. He's going to be doing way more damage to Guild Boss, to Tulpa, even usable in Arena, because he is sort of like a bruiser in that he's a drain tank with higher base stats. If we just compare, you can see that B-rated HP, B defense, and this is a higher B defense and a higher HP. So Garel's going to get that little bit of lifesteal. He's going to do a decent amount of damage and very, very good in Guild Boss, the best fire DPS in Guild Boss, as well as being a great Tulpa addition, occasionally used in Void Tower, and some arena defense and arena offense comps he can be used in. Next one up is going to be Crazed Urzak, and this one, he got a massive buff, not super recently, but definitely turned him into a character worth or wanting to get. He's going to have Unhealable on the basic, which can be used for a lot of different interesting comps in Queen. He is very, very utility-centric with that Unhealable and Strip on the second skill. Here, very, very good skill that can constantly proc if you have a lot of allies going ahead and attacking all the time. And then he has a very hard-hitting ultimate here, which actually can increase by 50%, so 300% damage multiplier here, which is very, very, very solid on Crazed Urzak, as well as being very tanky for being such a high DPS unit. Then we have Corrupt Aurak, and Corrupt Aurak is just the arena monster. He is super, super tanky with the highest, I think, HP in the game, base HP in the game, as well as having this true damage AoE at the beginning of every round, and it just goes off. 5% of the character's max HP to all enemies. Very, very good in Void Tower if you're running a tank comp / bruiser comp. Excellent in arena defense and offense, especially in arena defense, because if you run this guy in a rebel set, he can just randomly stun some of your team members, and there's literally nothing you can do about it. It's very, very oppressive. Very, very good arena character in Corrupt Aurak. Next group up is the Lasir faction. I actually ended up talking about Mognar because I just was on autopilot, but we're going to talk about Valeria here. She is the go-to AoE fire DPS. I still think Cyrus kind of fits in this category a little bit, but she is AoE from the beginning, and she is absolutely amazing for clearing waves, very similar to Zatlux, where she's refreshing her ultimate if she's clearing out that wave, as well as getting a bonus turn if she's killing someone. So if you have her go last behind your other damage dealers, she can sometimes get that AoE off, and then going into her second AoE, because her third and second ability here are both AoEs. Very excellent in an Abra set, and honestly good anywhere where you need a resetting wave clearer or just a big AoE fire DPS. Void Tower, Witch, Tulpa, you can even use her in Ash, you can use her in Campaign. Excellent, excellent character. Then we have Darken Niklaus, and I think a lot of people initially were a lot lower on this character than they probably should have been, including myself. I think that this character is actually amazing because there's a lot of situations where you're going to get to 0 HP, but the enemy's not going to finish you off. And if that happens, he's going to hit like a massive truck. He also has Unhealable on this AoE, so you can actually use him for Queen. Excellent arena character, excellent Void Tower character, because oftentimes Darken Niklaus will end up being that last character alive and get multiple ultimates, or rather multiple AoEs off if he's under that 50% HP, which is oftentimes happening in some of those game modes. Next up is going to be Niklaus, and unfortunately the light variant of Niklaus is just not very viable in a lot of content. He can have some select uses, perhaps something with Bulin, the most recent legendary, can be very, very interesting by sharing some of the attack. He honestly just doesn't do enough. By sharing this attack on the ultimate, he just doesn't provide enough attack to make it worthwhile using that slot for Niklaus versus someone else. One interesting thing, though, is that he does get that speed of your fastest character +1. Now, this is very, very important to note that this is the start of battle versus start of every round. So he's only going to do it that first turn. If you do get that Ascension trait, which is hard to get, it will be every round, but it's only that first turn. And honestly, that first turn is not worth bringing Niklaus in just because that share of attack. It's just not worth it. Next up is going to be Evelyn First On, and she did get a recent buff, and it did make her significantly better, in my opinion. That joint attack on the special ability is very, very solid. But she has one of the most unique abilities in the game because she breaks the whole idea of only going once per turn by granting a bonus turn to all allies at the end of the round. The problem with this is that it's at the end of the round, and so you oftentimes are too late. The characters go, they kill your units, or the bosses go, and then you already needed your characters to go before them so that you can actually prevent them from using their massive abilities like Tulpa with his shield or Ash with the big cannon hit. That being said, she can be used for some speed comps in those types of dungeons and has an amazing passive here by granting defense up to all team members at the start of each battle. And so Arena, Void Tower, those types of game modes, these buffs become super, super awesome, as well as that bonus turn. So I think she's really, really good in Void Tower and Arena, and so it has some speed comps that she could be used in as well. Then we're going to go on to the next faction, which is going to be the Soul Plunders faction, and we're going to start off with Ciara here. Now, Ciara is the highest single target damage dealer in the game, unless you count Vance with a ton of positive effects, because her ultimate has a 320% damage scaling if she stacks up that Vengeful Spirit, which is very, very easy if you just let her passive away some of the waves beforehand and then ult on that boss stage. She also has an amazing amount of attack because these Vengeful Spirit stacks also increase her attack. So attack becomes one of the most useful stats in the game for her. And again, as I said, this AoE is going to be proccing every 2 rounds. She doesn't need to use a skill for it. So it actually becomes one of the best AoEs in the game because she can still hit with her single target hits while also AoEing every round. And it just procs, right? It doesn't actually have to have her get a turn. If the enemy is under 50% HP, she's going to proc it, which is absolutely amazing. She's good in Ash, she's good in Campaign, she's good in Arena, she's good in Void Tower. Very, very solid character there. Next up is Abaddon, and unfortunately, Abaddon took a massive nerf when they changed the way his passive worked. Previously, this was increasing poisons and bleeds and things like that. It no longer does that, and so because of that, it's really, really hard to find a place for him because he just doesn't do quite enough damage just on his own, and he requires too much setup. And honestly, if you're using a poison comp, you're not going to want to drop a random Abaddon in there. You're going to want to get oftentimes another poisoner or something like that in there. This basic can be very good, applying a bunch of random status effects, but he's just not good enough to be run in anywhere. The only place he was running previously really was Guild Boss, and he's just not good enough anymore because he doesn't extend those poisons and such. Next up is Gengello, and Gengello is one of the single best PvE legendaries in the game. Probably one of my picks for the top 3, maybe not top 1 or 2, but definitely top 3. He is one of the only characters that can actually complete Gemini 12, and that is very, very important, although I don't think Gemini 12 is very, very important to complete PvE content. But he is very, very good. He can be used in every single dungeon for a speed comp, and he can also be used in Void Tower. He is a very, very excellent legendary, and honestly makes your poison comp into something that everyone should be afraid of. 100% damage from poisons is very, very excellent, and it's the reason why he's run. Really, the skills don't even matter oftentimes. It's just the basic to apply poisons. This extra poison damage is why you're going to be running him. Next up is Balbereth, and I think Balbereth is honestly a little underrated by a lot of people. The problem with Balbereth is that he gets outshined by things like Cyrus, by things like Garel, by things like those types of characters at least, or Valyria, and so the fire DPS doesn't really have a place in Balbereth, but he actually is very, very solid in this buff that he recently received on his second skill. If you run an Avarice set, this thing can actually hit very, very hard, and his passive can be used. And that's the one place I see him that can be used, is if you can get use out of his passive to revive and kind of take that fatal damage and then go ahead and use some big hitting skills. He definitely can be used in that way. But honestly, very, very few uses. Honestly, Void Tower is really the only place I've seen him used selectively, and sometimes in Arena, and maybe in Tulpa if you don't really have any better damage dealers than Balbereth. Next up is going to be Desmond, and Desmond is my personal favorite character in the entire game, just aesthetically as well as in his skill and a kit. Very, very unique character, and honestly a dungeon/Void Tower monster. He has one of the most unique abilities here with Plague Emissary. He's going to be stacking Plague, and then he's going to be doing massive chunks of the enemy's HP, specifically on bosses. He can be hitting for 60, 70,000 if he gets a lot of Plague stacked. Also, this second ability, don't be, doubting this second ability. Once you get a lot of Plague out there, this second ability is going to hit massively. Only problem with Desmond is that you do need the Plague to stack. You cannot have it cleansed, and so those Void Tower stages with a lot of cleanses or a lot of things like that, you don't want to be running Desmond in. And he's hard to keep alive in those dungeon stages because he actually kills himself on that ultimate. So you need some good stats in order to be running him, but he's very, very good in those dungeons and in Void Tower stages. Next up, we have the Sylvan Woodlands faction, and we have a bunch of supports in here. First up is Blackhorn, and Blackhorn is the single best healer in the game. He just heals for absurd amounts with the heal over time and his totem. He also applies some really, really nice cleanses every turn. Very, very good character overall, and honestly just a great support wherever you need healing. He's particularly good in Ash, Queen, Witch, Gemini, Void Tower, even in Tulpa. If you're running some more poison-oriented comps and some slower comps, he can absolutely be one of your best pieces as a healer. Next up is Mathasia, and Mathasia is the only reviver in the game, as well as being a great support herself. And she is the arena defense queen. She is so absurdly annoying to deal with, especially with someone like a dragon skill set on her. She is just amazing, as well as being a great support in all the other game modes as well. In Void Tower Hard, in Tulpa, in Queen, all those types of game modes. In Queen specifically, she allows you to break into an early Queen 12 comp earlier than normal because of the revival. Very excellent character in Mythasia, and one of the most annoying characters in the game. Next up is Cyrus, and Cyrus is an absolutely amazing fire DPS. I think she kind of counts as the second AoE fire DPS in the game. She has this scaling passive where every 2 turns or every 1 turn, she's going to get an extra attack with her, or rather an extra target hit with her ultimate and her second ability. And so she turns into an AoE DPS later on in the battles. And honestly, it stacks very, very quickly if you have that second ascension. Very, very good character. And I think a lot of people underestimate this second ability with the ability immunity, where she just completely negates abilities. I run her oftentimes in my bruiser comps, and the ability immunity is absolutely crucial to keeping her alive, and also kind of manipulating the enemies into hitting her so that they just absorb, they get their abilities absorbed by the ability immunity. Very, very excellent character in Cyrus. Next up is going to be Godfrey, and I think Godfrey is strictly a PvP character. I don't think there really is much use outside of PvP. There are some select Void Tower stages where I've seen people use him. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think he's absolutely amazing or anything like that. Really, you're going to be using him for just this passive where if someone puts a buff up on the allies, he's going to hit and have a 100% chance if you have the second ascension of putting these targets ultimate on cooldown for 1 turn. Very, very excellent passive here. Really just a PvP character in my opinion. You might be able to use him in Queen for the unhealable here on the second skill, but honestly, really just a PvP character. Next up, we have the Brands, and first up is Brand the Brilliant. I think a lot of people doubt Brand the Brilliant. I'm not sure why. He is just an excellent poisoner. Essentially, he acts as a poisoner. He has a ton of true damage on his ultimate, his basic, and his kind of rage stacking mechanic. I think a lot of people just doubt him and just say he's garbage, but I really just think he's just a great dungeon addition as if you were using another poisoner, and very, very tanky, I might add, as well as being a very, very good wave clearer compared to a lot of your poisoners out there. So honestly, an excellent character and a dungeon character, and if you have him, he's going to be an absolute amazing character in Void Tower with a tank comp because of that AoE true damage, as well as being just an overall great character. Next up is going to be Brand, and Brand is actually my pick for top 2 PvE legendary in the game. Simply because of Void Tower. I think he makes Void Tower very trivial, and I think Void Tower is one of the most important game modes in the game, and honestly, difficult to do. Queen and Ashe are very, very easy, in my opinion, in the grand scheme of the game, and so being able to beat Void Tower is really your first milestone as an account, as well as beating those Stage 12 dungeons, or after beating those Stage 12 dungeons, rather. And so Brand helps you do it much, much easier because you can run speed boots on your damage dealers, and you don't have to run the runs a million times to get the right RNG. Excellent character in Brand here, and really, really wish I had him. Next up is going to be Tia, and Tia has been someone I have been touting as one of the top legendaries in the game. I think a lot of people doubted her, and I think a lot of people are seeing how good Tia is in this Void Tower rotation. But she recently got above kind of the Bulbasaur treatment where her primary target's getting hit for more, as well as she can target the freeze on the top on whatever character she wants, as well as having the AoE chance to freeze. This freeze debuff is going to increase your damage of your whole team. Very, very, very good debuff, and honestly a crucial component for those of you that are trying to run new comps in Void Tower Hard. Absolutely amazing character there, as well as being actually a very good character in Witch because of her passive in the ability to reduce the speed of the Witch boss. Outside of that, Arena, of course, in that AoE freeze, very, very good there as well. Next up is going to be Yolanda, and Yolanda also received a buff recently with that second skill, giving the ally a extra turn, or a bonus turn rather, and then making sure that we're going to be never crit basically with the ultimate here. It's very, very good. It basically makes it so your arena comp is very, very unkillable. So very, very good character in Guild Boss and in Arena. Outside of that, it's very hard to find her a use, but she does do really, really great in those game modes, especially for Arena defense. Next up is Imogen, and a lot of people don't like this character. I don't know why. I think she's actually solid. She's above average. I don't think she's absolutely amazing, but she has all these joint attacks she's proccing out. So if you pair her with some people who really, really work well with that, she becomes a monster, especially with one of the newer characters. I think she could work really, really well with that. but she also has one of the only AoE strips in the game. And then the joint attacks, as I mentioned, she doesn't do quite a ton of damage. If she had a little bit higher damage, I would say she's an absolutely amazing character, but she's just an above average character in my opinion. Next up is going to be Evra, and Evra is my pick for the personal best rookie summon in the game. She has the highest ultimate damage multiplier between her passive and her ultimate, which proc on her ultimate. She's absolutely amazing for that, as well as having a lot of cooldown reduction and single target damage, as well as having a unique strip, which is very, very rare in a character. Very, very good character, and just a whole bunch of damage out of this Evra here. Next up is Bulin, and I believe this is the last one for this faction, as well as being the newest character to the game. And unfortunately, my opinion on Bulin is not very high. I've tested her quite a bit on the induction, and the induction debuff just doesn't do enough damage, in my opinion, to warrant building her out for any comp. This is really what I was worried about when I went over her kit. Really, induction needed to be good in order for her to shine, but she just doesn't do enough damage with that induction and someone's hitting it. She just doesn't do enough to replace another good damage dealer like Evra for Bulin's spot. So we're moving on to the Soul Plunders here and the last faction. First up, we have Zitlin, and Zitlin's a very interesting character here. He's actually very, very versatile in that he can actually be used in Arena as well as Void Tower for two reasons. One, we have this increased accuracy and precision. So basically, many people are not going to be deflecting or dodging if you use him in Arena. And then that extra part, what I was saying earlier, is this curse effect, which basically means after you apply the curse effect for the next 2 turns, any damage that the character takes, it doubles at the end of the curse. So it allows you to run a lot of speed comps in dungeons like Ash, even in Queen, in Tulpa, and in Witch. I don't think and in Gemini maybe. I'm not seeing too many Gemini Zitlin comps, but I think there is one. Very, very good dungeon speedrunner, as well as potentially Arena and Void Tower unit. Next up is Savannah, and I don't really see too many uses for Savannah. I really see her as a guild boss character. Perhaps if you slot her into a bruiser comp in Void Tower hard, she'll have some time to scale and do some massive damage, but she's really just a wood single target damage, and we have Intinua for that, so she really just gets tossed to the sidelines, and unfortunately just isn't very usable in my opinion. Next up is Molhex, and Molhex is one of the few characters in the game that can complete Ash 12 without Nathalia rather. Hydra is the other one. And he's just absolutely amazing in that case. And if you end up getting Evra on your squad and she ends up taking a bunch of turns, you can actually start to AoE every single turn, which is actually 200% damage, which is really, really massive. But it's on a 4-turn cooldown, unfortunately. So very, very solid character overall, but not someone I would be taking out of my rookie summons or anything like that. Next up is Hydrissia, and Hydrissia did receive a buff to make it so when you're AoEing on the ultimate or the second ability, if she's hitting 4 or more units, she's going to be going ahead and using her passive AoE, which is pretty massive. Very, very good character here. Unfortunately, she gets outshined by Nathalia a lot of times, but that does not mean she's bad. She just gets outshined, which makes her less usable than normal. So there you have it. That's every single legendary in the game reviewed. If you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this. I know it's going to be a longer one, but I wanted to go through all of them with all the kind of context behind it. We don't actually have too many characters in the game, so that will get much longer as the game progresses. And unfortunately, Bulin does not really fit the bill for me. So for all of you that are interested in pulling her, I would not recommend it. I don't think she's very good. Even though it's supposed to be a legendary video, I don't think she's actually a quality legendary. So would not recommend pulling for her, perhaps for future content, but not for right now. So that'll be it for this one. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.